Firstly, let me compliment the organizing team really for slotting me so perfectly after Amitabh, Sudha, and Mekin, who talked about what's broken, what are the big issues, and the criticality of scale. So that's the context in which I'm obviously going to talk. And for all this to happen, Devangshi, like you said, we need talent, and more talent. Just to give a context to what I'm going to talk about, in the last 20 years, our lives have changed unimaginably, and all of you know that. It has been taken over by technology, communication, media, unbelievable interconnectedness, and continues to change our lives on a very rapid basis. I can't even imagine how much more the world will change in our own lifetimes, and I'm sure some for good and some not so. Today, I want to draw your attention to just two things, given the sort of time limit that I believe will have a huge impact on the social sector and in turn talent in the social sector. Firstly, COVID, the pandemic. The pandemic has been the biggest disaster of our lifetimes. Besides what it has done to significantly change our lives, I believe it will continue to fundamentally change a lot more things in terms of how we do, how we imagine, how we live, how we interact, down to very core and fundamental ideas of life and living. COVID has demonstrated how broken the world is. It has exposed the fracture lines in our society like nothing has done so far. During COVID, it's also become blindingly obvious that the social sector has a super critical role in society. Without a vibrant social sector, the state and markets cannot and possibly will not be able to grasp and engage and address the huge social issues that face humanity. Megan talked about some of those big scale related things. Almost all of them started in the social sector and then, took greater shape through various other means of involving state in the markets. Besides COVID, or rather between COVID and climate change, I really think there is a tsunami happening that is going to change the social sector forever. We will see a huge impact, in my view, on the shape and trajectory of the social sector in the coming decades. Here are some immediate impacts of these two things that I'm talking about, COVID and climate change. Many of you would have heard about the great resignation that's happening across the world. People are all over the world, especially youngsters, are resigning from their jobs in large numbers and resigning from dream companies. And most of them are resigning without another job in hand. That's a trend we've never seen in the past. They're all seemingly looking for far more meaning and purpose in their lives. I think this will drive a lot more people to want to come and work in the social sector. A lot more talent in terms of numbers, in terms of the diversity of people who want to work, the specialization they will bring, and indeed different age brackets and different structures, gig employment, volunteering. There's a lot of that that's going to be happening as far as the talent front is concerned. Many of you would have also heard something that's happening on the business world, which is broadly referred to as conscious capitalism. Since COP26, things like ESG have become very big in the world of business. Sudha talked about how climate change is such an important thing and businesses are really beginning to change. Businesses, I believe, will be putting a lot more of their social and intellectual capital besides the financial capital to make the world a better place. They actually don't have a choice, because increasingly in very large numbers, their customers, their investors are preferring to associate with businesses that are far more socially and ecologically responsible. This will also result in a lot more and new kinds of work, if you ask me, in the social sector. The second thing besides the pandemic and its sort of combined effect with climate change for me is inequality. And here, by the way, I'm not referring to the inequality in society and what, for example, Amitabh talked about in terms of 7 people, earning half the wealth of this country, etc., which anyway is one of the biggest failures, if you ask me, in our social construct. But I'm specifically referring to the huge disparity in the scale, scope, size of businesses compared to social purpose organizations. And that is even more stuck. And if you do the math, it's like even that 1% having 50% wealth will be a very different level order. This turbocharged growth in the world of business that has created multi-billion-dollar business, even trillion-dollar businesses today, has left not only a large majority of people at the bottom of the pyramid behind, but also left the entire social sector behind in many ways. And by the way, this is even more dangerous because the hope of those millions lies in the social sector, and the social sector itself gets marginalized. You have a systemic problem at hand. Businesses are becoming bigger, more powerful, and reaching much larger sections of the population than organizations in the sector can even imagine. Today in India, there are more businesses with CSR budget, which is really 2% of their profits, of 100 crore plus, than there are non-profits with a total operating budget of 100 crores. I mean, that's a staggering gap that you have between the business world and organizations in the social sector. The largest consumer goods company in India, which happens to be Unilever, reaches 720 million people every year. The largest NGO in India probably reaches, and that's probably CARE, and I could have this data wrong, reaches about 38 million people in this country. It's a 1:20 ratio you're talking about. I mean, think about it. This should be the other way. Social sector organizations should be reaching 720 million people because that's the scale of the problem that, Amitabh talked about, that Mekin talked about. So what's causing this huge and increasing gap between businesses and the social sector? Number one, talent. While we get a share of the most passionate people coming to the sector, unfortunately, only a small fraction of the brightest youngsters are still coming to this sector. And we have to change that. And I believe it will change. And I'll talk about why in just a bit, a little bit to do with the great resignation, meaningful lives, etc., etc. The second reason for this gap is the ability on one side and the inability on the other side to leverage the latest inventions and creations of humankind. We have Mekin, for example, who comes from a company like Flipkart, right? How technology, connectivity, big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, communications, etc., have been leveraged to bring so much good services, etc., by the business world to the largest businesses in the world. The Googles, the Amazons, they are all big data companies. They work technology, they work data, they work artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth. That's a huge gap. There's a digital divide among people who can use and not use. There's a bigger digital divide between the social sector and the world of business. We need to figure how we close that gap. And the third is what Mekin said so beautifully, the ability to do things at scale. And this is, very much the work that ISDM is focused on, the ability to bring together and manage large numbers of people, large sums of money, huge processes, networks, etc., to work for a better world, bringing behavior change communication, bringing research and cutting edge work on that front, people management, innovative finance. We need to bring all this. And that's very much like I told you where, ISDM is working. Given all this background, I really believe that the sector is going to see a huge shift in the coming decades. Given the importance and the recognition of the importance of the sector, the fact that this world will never progress without a really vibrant social sector, I believe the sector is going to see a huge shift and become, I won't say equal, but a more equal player in the ecosystem of Samaj, Sarkar and Bazaar. And how will that happen? A profile of talent that will come into the sector is going to change significantly. Money that is going to come into the sector is going to change significantly, not just in volume, but also the type of money. I believe social purpose organizations going forward will look very different and will change from the stereotype image, which very often, people sort of derogatorily call the chola wala sort of a look, to what I believe will be a laptop wala. I don't see why we shouldn't be putting all that to work for better education, better public systems, and so on and so forth. A lot more influence, I believe, of management ideas, designs, but specifically for the sector. You can't take up just, pick and place here and hope that management work. No, this requires a lot more understanding of humanity, understanding of society, understanding of the complex intersectional nature of social challenges and multiple aspirations. A lot more, I believe, of crossing over of ideas between Samaj, Sarkar and Bazaar. Somewhere increasingly there is a divide. It seems like there are three pillars and they're all sort of insular. But I believe a lot more, osmosis will happen. There'll be a lot more porosity. And in turn, a cross-pollination of business management, public administration, and development management. In summary, what is the future of talent going to look like? Social sector is going to appeal and attract a lot more talent in the future. Inflow of money into the sector is going to significantly increase, and in turn, I believe pay scale, which is such an important driver for getting good talent into the sector. 3, social sector, I believe will see a lot more professionals in management disciplines, and with some prejudice, given that I come from ISDM, I'd like to believe that development management professionals will play a significant part of the future of talent. And I believe you're going to see decades of unbelievable progress going ahead, because some of the biggest changes have happened after the biggest catastrophe, World War being, a great example. And I do believe that the pandemic is going to create a new world and a significant ecosystem for the social sector. I know I'm 6 seconds over, so thank you very much, Devansh.